Hello and welcome to today's webinar about TCO Certified Generation 8. My name is Andreas Lorén and I am the certification manager for the criteria documents. And together with me today, I have Stephen Fuller, who is responsible for the research and implementation of our criteria that is covering social responsibility and chemicals. Today, we want to present to you the final version of TCO Certified Generation 8, and from now on, all 8 product categories will go under the same generation number. We will not be able to cover every small change that has been done. Instead, we will focus on what is new in comparison with the previous generation. Here is today's agenda. I'll start off by giving you a short introduction about TCO Certified for those of you who are new with us. And then we'll go into talking a bit about the process of TCO Certified Generation 8. Then we'll go into what is new and updated, connected to the criteria. And last but not least, we'll finish with a Q&A. So feel free to enter questions during the presentation and I will go through them one by one and answer them as good as I can. So a brief introduction. The certification has been around for over 25 years. Our vision is a sustainable life cycle for IT products, and that is what we strive for. TCO Certified is the world's leading and most comprehensive sustainability certification for IT products, helping you make responsible product choices that drive the industry in a sustainable direction. Today, TCO Certified is available in 8 product categories, and you can find a complete listing of certified products in our product finder, available at our webpage, tcocertified.com. A cornerstone of TCO Certified is our independent verification of compliance. This happens not only at the product level, but also in factories and with brand initiatives as well. Independent accredited partners verify that factories and products comply with all criteria in TCO Certified. Verification is done both before and after the certification process, covering the entire validity period. The process also includes ensuring that corrective actions are implemented in all cases of factory non-conformities. TCO Certified meets the requirements of ISO 14024, Eco Label Type 1, and has been approved by the Global Eco Labeling Network. All verification is carried out by verifiers in accordance with ISO 17025, the international standard for competence requirements applied to testing and calibration laboratories. With that said, verification is an important aspect of what we are doing, as getting to close some of the problems is what's so important, not just setting criteria up front. Today, we have over 3,000 currently certified products from 23 different brands, and historically, we have issued over 10,000 certificates. So, let's take a look at the schedule and how the phase out of the current generation will happen. The criteria today, or the criteria is updated every 3 years through a rigid and comprehensive process. And in order to deliver solid and credible criteria that drive sustainability, stakeholder engagement is key for us. Therefore, we would like to thank all brands, verifiers, and other stakeholders for supporting this process. Through your unique insights and input, we are able to deliver criteria that meet the current sustainability challenges on the market and really make a difference. So a big thank you to all of you who have been involved in this process. We have also seen a much higher interest than ever for TCO Certified Generation 8, meaning loads of comments and input, but also great discussions and meetings during the whole draft and changes phase. We are now open for applications for TCO Certified Generation 8. And if you want to be guaranteed to receive the certificates on the launch day on the 4th of December, you need to send in a complete application before the 20th of November. So keep that date in mind. The 20th of November is the last day that we absolutely can guarantee that you will be able to receive your certificate on the launch day of the 4th of December. But of course, we will do everything we can to make sure that you will be able to get your certificates even though you apply after the 20th, but we cannot guarantee it. The final and public launch will be held in Brussels, and there we will be recognizing the brands with the first certified products. So there will definitely be some good publicity opportunities around that. And more information connected to this will be published on our webpage and will also be sent out to you via email. So the phasing out of the current generation then. Well, the last day to apply for the current generation will be on December 3rd, 2018. And for us to be able to approve such an application, it would need to be complete. So a complete application on December 3rd of 2018 is the final date for the current generation. Then the closure of the current generation will happen on December 4th, 2020. So make sure to upgrade your certificates before that if you want the models to live on with the new generation, which is generation 8. So as I said, the application for the next generation is now open, so feel free to send them in. So what's new? Let's take a closer look. The first thing you'll notice is the new look of the criteria documents. The layout and the format of the document is changed to look more up to date, and is also to make it easier to read and navigate the document. The criteria background, mandate, and clarifications are now all grouped together. Before they were separated and it was a bit of a hassle to navigate the document, so hopefully you find this appealing. You will also find that all the forms that needs to be signed are also grouped together in Chapter 11. So now you only need to go to Chapter 11 to see what needs to be filled in and sent in to us or a verifier. There are many different groups of users that want to read this document, and hopefully we think this new layout will make it much easier. So generation 8 is taking the next big step with a number of new and updated criteria, as I said, and we are aiming to make improvements at the high impact points in the life cycle of an IT product. And for this generation, we have had 3 focus areas. And the first one is a more circular approach to IT products. And we tend to do this by extended product lifetime and a higher reuse of products. And this will be done through criteria such as battery lifetime, product durability, but also better material recovery. For example, reduction of hazardous chemicals, meaning cleaner materials. The second one is the supply chain responsibility and transparency. So here we focus on closing non-conformities and verifying supply chain improvements. New criteria for responsible minerals, anti-corruption, and process chemicals are some of that jacks into this focus area. And third but not least, we want to help you meet your commitment to the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, including responsible production and consumption. So, and giving you quantifiable results that can be used in our stakeholder sustainability reporting. So, if you are familiar with TCO Certified, you will see many new chapter names. We have, to some extent, sorted the criteria differently and also renamed the chapters. For instance, we have used to call what we used to call visual ergonomics is now sorted under product performance. And what we used to call end of life is now material recovery. There are several reasons behind the renaming, and the criteria chapters are now in a sequential order from manufacturing phase via use phase to recovery phase. And I'll start off with the first chapter, product and sustainability information. So the first thing you'll notice in this chapter is that the information to the end users is revised. And for this one, we have tried to harmonize our logo placement with Energy Star. But we have also updated the information document for the end users to make it more appealing to be placed in the packaging with a product. So we hope you will like that. But there's a little bit more to say about 1.3 sustainability performance. And the idea behind chapter 1.3 is that we want to collect more information regarding the products that are being certified. This information is called the sustainability performance indicators. And by collecting these indicators, we will be able to develop and set criteria levels that are challenging yet reasonable. We will also be able to implement a long-term strategy for how improvements can be phased in gradually and communicate this plan well in advance so that brand owners have a chance to adapt. Some of the sustainability performance indicators will also be published on the certificate. These will help to determine the sustainability benefits that the product creates, which is something that is of interest for purchasing organizations when they are doing their sustainability reporting. The third part of this criterion is that we now require the reporting of the annual production volumes of certified models. If we couple the sustainability performance indicators with the annual production volumes of certified products, we will be able to provide customized sustainability reports for each brand that are using TCO Certified, but also reports on how TCO Certified is helping brands and buyers reach the UN 2030 goals. And now I'll hand over to my colleague, Steve.
Thanks, Andreas. Okay, we'll jump into social responsible manufacturing then. So we've revised the mandate A21 by including a risk-based assessment scheme of all final assembly factories manufacturing TCO certified products. The plan here is to enhance our role and the brand owners in monitoring working conditions at factory level through creating a TCO certified accepted factory list. The requirement on the brand owner is that if a factory is registered to us and wishes to remain on our list, then it must annually undergo independent audits and prove closure of non-compliances by strictly following corrective action plans and conducting closure audits. Factories that perform best will receive benefits of this system by the lessening of audit fatigue, whilst those that persistently perform worst will eventually be restricted from the list. An added feature is that the list of original equipment manufacturers will be transparent to all certifying brand owners so that they can monitor the progress of their suppliers, work collectively with other brand owners to force improvements and see which ones are a better supplier to be doing business with. So the risk-based assessment excuse me, and audit frequency for factories is in relation to country of manufacturer, known closure of non-compliances, and a maximum of 60-hour working week, which includes overtime, regardless of local law. Supply chain transparency, the mandate A22, is revised also. This is our mandate on the senior management representative, the SMR, which at every brand owner company is appointed to be the responsible person to have an open dialogue with TCO development. The revised section then is that this mandate is once that the SMR has completed the self-assessment questionnaire, that they must undergo a follow-up meeting with an approved independent social verifier. So as a quick clarification here of why we use the word transparency in this mandate is that the SAQ is a set of questions to help assess the level of competence at the brand owner companies and how they manage social risks and monitor compliance to their code of conduct in their extended supply chains. So the open dialogue and answers also provides a good source of what brands consider to be best practices that can be a guide to the choice of future social criteria in the next generation of TCO certified. So this leads me nicely into the next 3 mandates for anti-corruption, responsible sourcing of minerals and processed chemicals, since these 3 were identified in our present SAQ as areas that required more brand owner structured involvement. Next slide. So corruption is one of the biggest obstacles to sustainable improvement in any supply chain in both developing and developed countries. This makes combating corruption a very important issue. For assessing the responses to our SAQ related to anti-corruption, we see that although brand owners have the right ambitions to regulate corruption, they often lacked a structured system to implement those policies. Therefore, the A23 mandate on anti-corruption now requires brand owners to assess the gap their regulatory programs have to the ICC rules for combating corruption and the ICC guidelines for whistleblowing, and then to implement all necessary improvements after that. So these elements in the ICC give organizations the guidance they need to create a minimum level of what a corporate compliance program should include in order to implement a structured system to monitor and enforce the prevention of corruption happening in their businesses. For some years now, cobalt has been talked about to be added to the definition of conflict minerals due to the human rights abuses uncovered in the DRC. Since this hasn't yet happened, we have revised our 3-year-old mandate on conflict minerals to go beyond tungsten, tantalum, tin, and gold and require brand owners to take responsibility for cobalt. And anywhere in the world, their sourcing of minerals can lead to human rights abuses. So the mandate A24, responsibly sourced minerals, requires 3 parts to be fulfilled. These include the brand owner policy to be a global one, and that can be considered at least to include conflict minerals plus cobalt. The second part is that brands must provide proof of implementing the OECD traceability best practices down their supply chain of the high-risk minerals in order to identify risk smelters. This means using the Responsible Mineral Initiative conflict mineral reporting template and also the recently launched cobalt reporting template as part of that identification process. And the final part of this 3-part criteria is that they must join a multi-company initiative that are engaged in international programs supporting local mining communities where IT mineral sourcing has led to human rights abuses. So before I finish with this slide, I'd like just to mention or recommend to you that you take the chance to listen to a webinar we held recently covering conflicts and the violence in the supply chain of IT products. There, the guest speaker was Joachim Wolfall of Diakonia, who shared his knowledge and experiences from visiting mines in the DRC. And here you can find the webinar available on the TCO Certified website. In a new report by the United Nations Human Rights Council, it's estimated that 1 worker dies every 15 seconds from toxic exposure at work, whilst over 2.5 million workers globally die from unsafe and unhealthy conditions of work each year, and that cancer accounts for over 70% of occupational diseases worldwide. I could go on with these disturbing statistics, but what becomes fundamentally obvious from reading these reports or statistics is that despite obligations relating to worker protection and exposure, workers around the world find themselves in the midst of a health crisis that can only be accounted for with the exposure to toxic substances at work. So the new mandate on processed chemicals is one I'm particularly excited about, since we are now taking a significant step into identifying those chemicals used in the factories. These are the chemicals that workers without the correct protection or protective clothing or training are exposing their healths to when applying these chemicals to the IT products that we purchase. During the mandate pilots I conducted with some chosen factories, I found that amongst the chemicals being used as cleaners today include some highly toxic ones that have long been restricted in developed countries. So brand owners, of course, are working with their own list of restricted substances on their production lines, the so-called MRSLs. However, no MRSL is created equal, meaning that a substance may be restricted from one brand owner's production line, but not from a competitor's, since it is considered essential for their production process. This is all, however, inconsequential, since MRSLs do not necessarily mean that the substitute substance is less toxic than the one it is intended to replace. So we require factories to declare the types of chemical products being applied on production lines and the type of personal protective equipment being provided to the exposed workers. Our goal is to eventually create an accepted substance list for process chemicals. So with all this in mind, we are introducing this new mandate called A25 process chemicals. As a first step, we require that workers are being provided a safe working environment and that the factory has competent persons for chemical management. This we consider will be achieved by demanding the factory has a certified health and safety management system, which is best verified by OSAS 18001 or the new ISO 45001. Additionally to this, and to start the process for identifying safer substances, we also require the completion of the CEPN process chemical data template. This is to identify what cleaning products are being used by the IT industry and to gain insight that workers are being provided the recommended training and protective equipment for the use of any identified highly toxic substances. So this template can be obtained from our approved verification partners or myself. And finally, as you see with our inclusion of the 16-part safety data sheet, section 8 recommendations, protective equipment and training of the worker in regards to their exposure becomes a key concern whilst we use the gathered information to work towards developing an accepted substance list for process chemicals. So once again, then we are attempting to use our position with a network of brand owners and suppliers to work at identifying a list of safer alternatives. And more of this I'll cover later on in the webinar when I come to the mandate of plasticizers. So now I hand back to Andreas.
Thank you, Steve. So we'll go into chapter 3, which is environmental responsible manufacturing. And here we have a new criteria called energy efficiency indicators. So we think that the next natural step is to start looking at the production phase and the energy efficiency connected to the production phase, because over the last decades we have only been focusing on the use phase. But however, if you look at the life cycle of an IT product, you will find that the energy used during the manufacturing process is in many cases higher than the energy usage during the use phase. As of now, we follow Energy Star, as many of you know, for the use phase of the products, and we think their criteria are relevant, but there is not much reported on the production phase. Therefore, we will start to collect the following information that I'm about to show you here. So, for example, does the factory have an energy management system? This is so that we can identify best practice and help to start spread this information to other factories that might be lagging behind. We also want to collect the total energy consumption for the factory. We want to collect the percentage of renewable energy consumed by the factory. And also 3 key points that we have identified through the Öko Institute in Germany, which is, are there any clean room facilities in-house? Is compressed air used for handheld tools at the assembly? Or is there an in-house reflow PCB soldering? These 3 are very energy intense operations. So that's why we want to look closer at these 3. And hopefully by gathering this data, we will be able to develop relevant criteria for the generation 9 of TCO Certified. Moving on to chapter 5, we're now moving into the use phase of a product, and the main revision for this has been done to the products with displays. So what we have done here is that we have tried to harmonize as much as possible with IDMS, which stands for the International Measurement Display Standard, run by VISA or ICDM. And we think this will make it much easier to test, and we think the test method is more robust since the new test methods takes a lot more different scenarios and user cases into account than the previous test methods. Another thing that is revised is also the Energy Star criterion. So what we have done is that we have harmonized with specific versions now of Energy Star. So Energy Star 7.0 or later for displays, or Energy Star 6.1 or later for notebooks, all-in-ones, and desktops. And the reason behind this is that the latest version of Energy Star is very tough, and we cover a broad variety of criteria, so we cannot have one that cancels out too many products. So for now, we'll stick with, as I said, 7.0 or later for displays and 6.1 for notebooks, all-in-ones, and desktops. However, what is new is the display resolution requirement. So why did we change this, and why am I calling this new? Well, the old test method was developed way back in the 1990s when displays were much smaller than they are today. And what has happened is that the displays have gotten bigger and bigger, but our desks are still the same size. So what we have done, we have based this criterion on anthropometric data, which gives us real-life viewing distances for different product categories. And then we have increased the perceived resolution from 30 to 40 pixels per degree. And if we convert this to something that is more understandable, you can read it as it will be a requirement for 70 ppi for displays and all-in-ones. That is pixels per inch, and 100 ppi for notebooks, 145 for tablets, and 165 for smartphones. For projectors, there's a whole different story because it's much more complex depending on how far away you are sitting from the display. So there we have something called the TCO Certified screen size. So you can read more about that in the criteria document connected to projectors, and I will not go through this in this presentation. So moving on to chapter 6, product lifetime extension. Well, this is a whole new chapter. And this chapter is tied very closely to circularity, which we see a growing trend towards. This is something that is discussed within the EU and many other places. And to meet the demand from the regulations and purchasers, we are including a number of criteria to promote just that, circularity. And I'll go through them now one by one. So first out, it's the replaceable components. These components differ a lot between the different product categories, and what we want is to prolong the lifetime of a product. And one way of doing that is to make sure that there are replaceable components if the product breaks down. But another way is also through that the brand owner must provide a service manual describing on how these different components should be replaced, and this should be available for anyone to read. And why is that, you might ask then? Well, when a product goes out of your warranty, we want the third-party repair shops to be able to use best practices when they repair the products, so products can be used for a longer period of time. Second out is standardized connectors. So by using one standardized interface, such as USB Type-C, for charging and data transfer. We think that fewer cables need to be manufactured, and the reuse of chargers and data cables can increase. We base this on, if you remember how it was back in the 1990s and early 2000s with feature phones such as Nokia, Ericsson, Siemens, etc. All of them had their own proprietary chargers. And this is something we want to, and all of them were replaced by the micro USB standard. And we want to see this as well for notebooks, tablets, and smartphones, especially when it's possible. So you will be able to go from your office or to your home without having to bring your charger, but also so that you can buy maybe a new computer without having to buy a charger that comes with it. But another key thing with the USB Type-C connector is that it's much more robust and better designed for the future. So it holds a lot of different features, such as something called the eGPU for notebooks. And this enables a notebook user to upgrade their graphics performance so that they will be able to keep their notebook for a longer period of time without having to replace the whole product. Next up is product durability. So here we have set out to start out with 3 different tests. So we are looking at drop tests, high temperature tests, and low temperature tests. And these tests we will use the test methods from the MIL STD 810G standard, which is the military standard for products used by the American Army. Or you can use the IEC 60068-2 test procedures. And we have set the criteria as an entry level because we want to get rid of the worst products on the market, and therefore the criteria look as they do as of now. Next up is battery longevity and replaceability. So this criterion goes for notebooks, tablets, smartphones, and headsets. And this comes from basically the EU 2030 Eco Design Directive, which requires that the amount of battery charging cycles is declared for every notebook computer sold in the EU. This is something we want to expand to all our product categories. And on top of this, we are also demanding that the main battery must be able to withstand a minimum of 300 charging cycles with at least 60% of the initial capacity. And we have set the minimum number of charging cycles to 300 because, as I said, for product durability, we want to get rid of the most low level or the lower end of products, so that if you buy a product that is TCO certified or certified according to TCO certified, we want the purchaser to know that they will be getting a good product. What can be said about these criteria is also that the testing can be done in-house if the laboratory is accredited to ISO 17025. And we hope this will bring down the test costs as well. Next up is the secure data removal from products. So the idea behind this comes from when we have been talking to different purchasers and other organizations. A lot of them say that they are afraid to sell their products because they are afraid that the data will come into the wrongful hands. So what we have done is that we have looked at the NIST 888 revision 1 for the level of clear, which is developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is run by the US Department of Commerce. So we hope that by the brands providing this via software pre-installed or via a link on their webpage, that the end user will feel more safe to erase all the data and be sure that all the data is erased, so that they can either resell their products or give it away to some charity, etc., so that the products live on for a longer period of time. This also goes in line with the main focus of circularity, which is the prolongation of the lifetime. And moving on to Chapter 7, reduction of hazardous substances. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you. Plasticizers then. In 2015, we changed our strategy. I think there's the next slide here, if we hop to that one. Yeah. We changed our strategy of only working with restricted substance lists and introduced our list of safer alternatives. So this not only avoided equally hazardous substances entering the certified products, but gave industry a list of safer alternatives for the deselection of substances early on in their production process. So this kind of list helps them to make safer choices in regards to what is known about the chemicals in regards to hazard, and avoid expensive recalls of products due to future restrictions. So 3 years after the success of our initial ASL, we now consider industry needs an accepted list of plasticizers to help them identify the safer alternatives to the 4 plasticizers that will be restricted by RoHS from middle of next year. The new mandate A74 now adds plasticizers to the TCO Certified ASL, focusing on plastic parts of the certified product that are the housing and the cable insulation parts, or otherwise known as cable jackets. To be placed on our ASL, plasticizers, as with flame retardants, are required to be independently assessed and achieve a green screen benchmark score of 2, 3, or 4. So this means that substances of benchmark 1 and U are restricted and need to be replaced with a substance on our list. So I'm pleased to announce by showing you the next slide, if we jump to that our ASL now includes a choice of 10 plasticizers, giving industry a very good starting list towards safer substitutions. Here you can see benchmark 2 and 3 plasticizers, and all have been assessed by independent licensed green screen profilers. So now perhaps for the first time for plasticizers, industry can not only be transparent on which chemicals they restrict, but also transparent about the ones that they're using as substitutes. My hope for this public list is that it will grow not only in the numbers of accepted substances, but that it will also be a useful source to all industries that manufacture products that require the use of plasticizers. I say this because the EU very recently voted through a proposal to restrict the 4 phthalates DEHP, BBP, DBP, and DIBP, DEHP being by far the most used plasticizer from all products. As usual through the EU only lists what it restricts, giving industry a free hand to making regrettable substitution choices from a large source of available substances we know very little about. The EU state that a gradual restriction of these 4 will start 2 years from now in 2020. We think that thanks to our ASL, the restriction process can now move a lot quicker than that. So the message to industry is, use this list, add to our list, and let's stop using substances with unknown human health and environmental effects. So I'll hand back to you, Andreas.
Thank you, Steve. So let's go into how you should apply for TCO Certified Generation 8. Well, I always recommend you to contact our verifiers that are listed on our webpage. But you can also visit our webpage, tcocertified.com/step-by-step guide for brands, which will take you through the whole process if you are new to us. But the best way is to contact one of our approved verifiers. And I think that concludes this webinar. If you have any further questions, as I said before, just use the email that you have in front of you. Or for those of you who know me, you can send me a private email. Thank you so much for listening in, and I hope to see your applications coming in soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.